viewers, and welcome back to the Self-Made Auto Channel. Got us a Kia Sedona here, fresh auction vehicle. As you can see, Carfax approved, one owner, low mileage. It runs like poo. Money lights on, it's flashing. No history on the vehicle, of course. Like I say, it came from the auction. The guy bought it, must have bought it on a good deal, kind of on a gamble. Wants to see what's wrong with it. It sounds terrible when it runs. Definitely sounds like it has a misfire. And I also noticed when I cranked it over, it sounds like it has some compression issues on some cylinders. So we're gonna grab the scan tool, get started. I gotta clean up my mess here from the last vehicle. We'll get started on this one, see what's going on with it. Here's what she looks like under the hood. That is a 3.8 liter. I see lots of, well, a couple new parts here. We got some new coils there in the front. I see some new bolts on the intake. Looks like, new nuts anyways. Somebody's probably been fiddling. Like I say, with auction cars, you never know. I did pull codes out of it. What do we have? P0016. Yeah, you can definitely feel that when it's running. And a 0016 for, what is it? Crankshaft position, camshaft correlation, bank 1. Alright. Well, let's begin. I think first thing I want to do is I just want to grab cranking current. I just want to see, it sounds to me like it has a dead cylinder when it cranks, but let's just get a baseline and then we'll take it from there. So you guys have seen me do this before. We're going to do relative compression. I've got a high current clamp on the negative side of the battery. You can do it on either side. And then for a trigger, I just grabbed this front cylinder. I don't know if that's 1 or 3 or 2. But as long as we have a trigger and we know where it is. And then up on our screen here, we're going to see our starter current, and then we should see the trigger from our primary voltage off the ignition coil so we know which cylinder is which. So I'll get you guys set up here. Oops, going the wrong way there, fella. Just want to get a lot of time on our screen here. Alright, so I'm not real happy about having you guys just pointed at the screen here, but I had some issues with my screen recorder and it made me lose a really super sweet video, so we're going old-fashioned style. What the heck's going on here? Alright, here we go. Doesn't sound too good to me, fellas. Doesn't look too good to me either. Let's make sure. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it starts back at 1. Let's get the firing order because it looks like every other cylinder has higher current draw, or every other one has lower current draw. This thing's peaking out at 250 amps, which I think is pretty high. Where are these ones at? About 197, so about 50 more amps to pull these cylinders, whatever these extra higher peaks are. Let me grab the firing order. So I got us the firing order. I took a screenshot. So 1, 3, and 5 are on a bank, 2, 4, and 6. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is the firing order. It's a pretty easy one to remember. So where are we? Here we are. Open this up. Yeah. And we can see 2, 4, and 6 are our low cylinders because we triggered off cylinder number 2. So 2, 4, and 6 are lower contributors. 1, 3, and 5 are higher contributors. And then what did we say? Where's my mouse? There it is. 1, 3, and 5 are on a bank. So we have essentially one bank. If we'll look at it that way, we have one bank that is either drawing more, drawing less, or has more resistance or less resistance, whichever bank we want to look at. And what was our codes here? Our code was for bank 1 cam crank correlation. So we very likely could have a timing problem. If we had a timing problem, it would throw our our relative compression rate off, because it's going to throw the actual compression off. If we were to stick a gauge in it, perhaps we'd have one cylinder that had higher compression, one cylinder that had lower compression. So the next thing we can do to prove this, I guess, I mean, obviously we have a mechanical engine problem. There's no doubt in our mind right now that we have a mechanical problem. We could do a cam crank correlation if we can find a known good cam crank signal or waveform online. I do not have one. So we can do that, or we could do an in-cylinder pressure test and look at the valve opening and closing and give us something definitive. However, we cannot get to the rear spark plugs on this engine, so we'd have to, hope that our problem is on our front cylinders. All right, so you can see there pretty quick we can make an early assessment, I guess, of the overall health of the engine. Obviously, there's a mechanical problem. The code, kind of indicates that too with a cam crank correlation. Do you go and just whip the timing cover off it on a guess? Well, I won't. Perhaps you could. Being that our problem is on bank one, it's on the back side of the engine, we can't get to the spark plugs without pulling an intake manifold. And then once we do that, we're kind of limited as to what we can do. I did look online. I did find a known good waveform for cam and crank. So we can simply find out where the cam and crank sensors are, if they're accessible. I don't see them right off the bat. However, ECM sits right over there. I'll find out what pins are what. It looks like it has Hall effect type cam signals from what I can see, in an AC, inductive type crank sensor. The picture I have hopefully is good. It's labeled as good. It looks like the cam patterns line up, perfectly on top of each other, and the mark on the crank lines up with one of those. You'll see once we get that. I'm going to find out where the pins are, where these sensors live, where's the easiest spot to plug into them, so we can see, we can make an assessment, say, well, is the timing chain off in the back, or is it off in the front, or what's going on, and then we'll take it from there. So it should be in connector B, according to my wire diagram, which conveniently they were labeled. Where is it? Oh yeah, right here on the housing. It says B. And I was like, well, which one's B? Sometimes you don't know. We're going to play with a new tool. I want to open up this harness just a smidge. I got the air cleaner pulled back. So I'm going to stick my tool in there, try to do it where you guys can see. And we should be able to cut this Tessa tape without having to worry about cutting our wires. I'll get lined up in a groove. Story of my life. Open this up just a smidge, because these unfortunately we got to find pins, what is it, 20, 24 and 26. So it starts out what, number 1 over here on the top row, is it? No, it's number 20 over here on the top left hand side. So we're going to be the second row in. So I just wanted to get some wire exposed for us. Let's open that up just a little bit more. Let me just trim that off so it doesn't start to unravel. Alright, so that'll open it up enough for us. Then I'm going to kind of give it the little sprinteroo here. I'm going to get down to that second row. 21 should be the very bottom one. Next one in, that's white. Let me look at my diagram. And that is white. Alright, well, at least we got the right color. So I'm going to kind of spread these out a little bit. The harness is pretty tight. Actually, you know what? There's a little holder down there. I can just unclip that from the holder, get it up where we can work on it. There we go. Now we're cooking with fire. Hopefully not a fire, but I just want to get to these wires where we can poke them and where we can fix them after we poke them. I'm afraid to back probe them. These are super duper tiny pins. You can very, very easily cross pins on this style. So that's the last thing I want to do. Thing is the bee's knees, man. This Tesla tape is so strong. It's like a cloth reinforced tape of sorts. I think they use it a lot on European stuff. It's pretty well abrasion proof, works pretty good. You can buy it by the roll on Amazon. Tesla, like T-E-S-A. Okay, let's fish out our wires. So I've got everything hooked up. I labeled them bank 1 and bank 2 because I couldn't remember who's who. And on the wiring diagram, they weren't labeled that clearly. It just said camshaft sensor 1, camshaft sensor 2, top left of left rear of engine. So that's this one here. So that is bank 2. I verified it. I opened it up. It is the gray wire, and I believe that's what it said here. Yeah, it's that one I got highlighted. The gray is our signal wire. So that is bank 2 on the front side, bank 1 on the rear side. Now, before you take a cam crank correlation, you have to unplug its ability to change cam timing, because it says variable cam timing. So I unplugged the phasers, or the solenoids rather, and I noticed this here. This is off the rear solenoid. I don't know if that has power on it, so I'm being kind of careful with it. Somebody's already been there. The connector is completely busted. So that's pretty interesting. That one there is broke. The other one, where's the other one live? I unplugged it. Oh yeah, right for my face, man. Right there. So that's what it's supposed to look like. That's what that one looks like. So somebody's already been there. I don't see it down inside that solenoid. So it's that open connector down there. I do see some old blue rag material down in the intake, so like I say, somebody's been playing. Probably the reason it went to the auction. It does have new coils in the back, and I don't know if it's just variable cam on the intake or if it's intake and exhaust. I'm assuming just intake because I only see one set of solenoids, and the cam sensor is only, there's the cam sensor there, the other one's in the back. And I think, yeah, I don't see any on the exhaust, so it's got to be cam sensor on intake only. The other one is, where is it? Right there. Not sure where the crank sensor lives. I didn't see it down by the crank. That's the main reason I went right for the ECM. So it's probably variable cam timing intake only is going to be my guess. But with them unplugged, they should go to their resting position. I don't know if this style has a lock pin or not, or if just oil pressure holds it steady. But let's get her up here on the scope. Here we go. Again, I apologize for the whole screen thing here. Let's see, is our scope running? Alright, it's running. Here we go. I'll tell you what, let's change our time basis here. So to fill up the screen. I'm going to take and shut it off now. Alright, so there's that. Okay. This way here we can zoom in. Enhance. We want to get probably 720 degrees, but I can tell you right now from looking at the known good to looking at this, our cam to cam correlation is at least off. Cam to crank, I don't know, but the known good that I have, the cam patterns here, they line up directly on top of each other. Let's see. I gotta remember which. Let me look and see what our red trace is. Holy crap biscuit, fella! Everybody okay? Good. Our red is bank 1. That's the bank we're having a problem with. Now what we need to do is I've got to get my known good and see where it falls in relationship to the crank. I believe one of the falling edges here on the last set of 3 lined up with the rising edge of the gap in our crankshaft. Let me grab our known good. Like a moron, I X'd out of that before I saved my waveform. Let me unplug the Pico here. So I saved that one. Let me Throw in my jump drive. So let's look at this. This is just going to be a screenshot. I don't have a, couldn't find a Pico file. Whoa, that's hella small. Enhance, enhance. Here we are. Whoa, I'm drawing all over this thing. What the thunder did I just do? Rookie. Okay, so here we are. There they're showing, you know, bank 1 and bank 2. They line up perfectly on top of each other. And as I, whoa, let me get a pointing apparatus here. As I stated, the rising edge, or I'm sorry, the falling edge of the 3, so what was it, like 3, 2, and then a big one, for lack of a better term, lines up perfectly with the notch in our crank signal. Our crank signal, I think, is like a 58 tooth, and then it's missing teat too. Must be from Avoca. So let's open this baby back up. This is the file that I saved. Always save your files. I say that and then I completely X out of it. And then label your channels too, especially how you captured them, whether or not, especially if you're doing cam and crank and you're going to share them with somebody, whether or not you had the solenoids unplugged. That's super duper important. So we're 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. Okay. And then let's just zoom in on, let's say 720-ish. Let's enhance that one more time. Let me get these labels down. Okay. So there's one last thing that we can look at is to see, you know, how far off is it. So I've set up a cursor. We got 720 degrees here, stretch across the bottom. 720 degrees of crankshaft rotation. And remember, our cam spins at half that rate. So we're going to pick a known good mark. We'll pick that mark right there if my fingers work. We'll grab another one right here. This way we can measure the difference between these two. And let's see, we have a delta of 62 degrees. What we want to do is we'll change this to 360 degrees. So we'll change that to 360. So as it is off, the difference is 30 degrees. Does it matter or doesn't it matter? In this case, because my head's a little bit clouded, getting over a cold, dealing with a cold, I almost kind of goofed up here. Almost ready to just pull the trigger and say, gotta pull timing covers and see what's going on. But the fact that it's advanced means a couple things. And I think I mentioned this earlier, I don't really remember where I'm at right now, but if it's advanced, it's usually human involvement. Somebody has gotten in there and, you know, done some meddling and things they ought not be meddling in, or the cam solenoid that controls the phaser that actually advances the camshaft potentially could be stuck. With the code being generated, we can't go in with the scan tool and advance it. I would be, because let's say the timing chain really is off, and let's say the solenoid does work and we advanced it, and now all of a sudden the thing is 50, 60 degrees advanced, all of a sudden pistons start pushing valves back where they need to be and the whole motor crashes. So I would be hesitant to grab a power probe and just, you know, advance that camshaft, assuming, you know, the timing really is off. But what we can do is we can test those solenoids independently of themselves. They should click. We should hear them moving around. There is that possibility that that one that has a broken connector on it is, you know, stuck open. So as soon as we start this, it gets oil pressure and boom, you know, it's fully advancing that camshaft. Because being that it's at that 25 to 30 degree advancement mark, it's really got me thinking that's about the max advancement that these engines will go when they do advance it. So we can check that real quick. So now it's gonna be hard for you guys to see down here. You're gonna have to take my word for it. I've got 4 jumper wires down there. I finally got them fidgeted in. I'd use a mirror and a pair of needle nose to get onto these cam solenoids. The solenoids control the oil pressure that goes to the phaser advances the camshaft. So what we can do is we can check the resistance on them. We'll check the one in the back here, so it's going to be bank 1. We'll see what that is. I think I get a good reading. That one is at 8 ohms. Okay, just make sure the wiring is intact. Now we'll come into this one here. This is going to be bank 2, the front bank. See if I can get clipped in there. And that one is at 8 ohms also. So while I'm clipped in, we're going to change this back to volts DC. I'm going to make sure my buzzer is off, and it is. I'll give it a little beans. We'll see if we hear it. Alright, so we hear that one opening and closing. I'd be very hesitant to do this with the engine running because, like I say, if the chain is off, she's going to crash, and you're going to hear it. It's going to be bad. So this one will put power to it. Is it sparking or what are we doing here? Make sure we got connection. We do, we have connection. We got no clicking. We got some sparks flying. So that solenoid is stuck. Yeah, we got sparks flying in there. The coil is good. It's 8 ohms. It's going to pull more than an amp. And it's stuck. Oh, hallelujah. Because that means the timing cover doesn't have to come off. We can assume, well, we may be wrong. It could be stuck in its closed position. And the chain is still off. But at this point, that solenoid, which somebody has been meddling with, is stuck. That looks like a real freaking treat to get at too. And the connector is busted also. Handy. Well, we have definitely learned something here, folks. First of all, don't jump to conclusions. And if you see that your timing is off a seemingly unrealistic amount, you have to make sure that the device that drives the cam phaser is not stuck. This one, fortunately, is. It is mechanically stuck. And I think that's forcing our camshaft to a full advancement. What we have to do now is get permission from the customer, get the bolt out of it, see if we can pull that little guy out of there. Hopefully we can. It looks pretty, I know you guys can't see down in there, but it's tight like a tiger. I guess worst case scenario, we'd have to pull the intake off, pull the lower intake so we can get on it with something. But it looks pretty nasty. I also like to find this connector because there's no way I want to try to plug that thing back in. Had I known that, I'd have never unplugged the dang thing. Oh yeah. So that's it, folks. I think that's a good find. I'm a little, almost slightly disappointed in myself because I almost pulled the trigger on that too soon. I almost called him and says we need to pull timing cover. Rear cam intake is advanced. I'm glad we didn't. Now we may still have to. However, I'm not going to make that call until we know that that solenoid works. If that is indeed stuck open, that's going to fully advance the camshaft, which most cars, 25, 28, 30 degrees, somewhere in there, that's their magic number. That's how far they like to roll them. When we were looking on the Pico, we could see that's how much advanced we are. So it's pretty probable, because we don't hear it clicking, you know, it's obviously not moving. It's probably, you know, sludged up or something stuck in there keeping it from going. It may be stuck closed, it may be stuck open. There's no definitive way to tell that. And that's it. We're going to keep going. Go down there in that question box, comment box, leave them questions that you have. If I get the job, there's going to be a part 2. We'll put it on. I'm going to leave my stuff, leave my back probes hooked right into, or my back probes, I can't even think today. Leave my wire piercers hooked right into the ECM. Leave that stuff just kind of tore apart until we, you know, find out what's going on. If he decides to take this home and do it himself, well, you know, we'll never see the end, but just have to trust me on this one, folks. While you're down there, click subscribe, ring that bell and all that stuff. And just remember, viewers, if I can do it, you can do it. Thanks for watching.